Today's video is brought to you by Veloy. Last year on the channel, I put together a budget film scanning setup using a cheap older digital camera to see if you could build a capable system without spending a lot of money. And I ended up with a Fuji X-A3 and an older vintage Canon macro lens, and honestly I was pretty surprised by the results. Resolution aside, they weren't that far off from the scans I was getting using my GFX 50R. And that video has been up for about a year now, and every now and then I'll get comments on it where people will say, you know, good luck finding this equipment for that price anymore, and there's no cheap cameras out there, and this and that. And it kind of inspired me to go and make a part 2 where I do another budget build, but I try to shave off even more money by looking for the absolute cheapest digital camera that I can find to see if it's still a capable tool. And I gotta say, I was quite surprised by the outcome. A much older camera, much lower megapixels, much more affordable, but still very capable. Also, just like the last video, partnered up with Veloy. I'm gonna do another giveaway, actually 2 giveaways. So one is for this entire camera scanning setup, camera lens, accessories, and then Veloy also sent over one of their Easy 35 units, which I'll do as a second giveaway. So if you want into either one of those, just leave a comment below, and a week from the post date of this video, I'll pick 2 winners. So in the last video, as mentioned, I used a Fuji X-A3, which is a 24 megapixel camera from 2017, and that cost me £125, which was a really good price. This time around, we're gonna go back to 2009 using the first ever micro 4/3 mirrorless camera, the Lumix G1 with its 12 megapixel sensor, and this one cost me £29.95. The cool thing is the shutter count is actually quite low. I think it was around like 5,000, but the body is a little beat. The texture of it is like very gummy and it's kind of peeling off and stuff, but that's the beauty of shopping for a camera when you're building out a setup like this, is the cosmetics don't really matter. So you can save some money as long as you find something that is technically working well. When it comes to the lens, last video we used a Canon FD 55mm macro with a Canon extension tube, and that combo came in at £59. This time around I ended up with a Vivitar 55mm macro in Canon FD mount, which cost me £45. My goal was to find the cheapest older macro lens I could that still reviewed well. That's what brought me to the Vivitar. The nice thing is this is a native 1:1 macro, so you don't actually need an extension tube, and it's actually pretty well regarded. So at £45, couldn't pass this up. But if you do take your time to look and you check out, say, older macros from Canon or Nikon or even Pentax and Olympus, there are deals out there waiting to be found. To mount it to the camera, I picked up an FD to micro 4/3 adapter from a company called Earth, and this cost me £25. So that brought the total for the camera and lens combo to just under £100 at £99.95. And in comparison, the X-A3 Canon combo from the last video was more than double that. It was just under £210. So even though this is lower resolution, I was pretty happy with the total cost. So next up is the actual camera scanning setup. The one thing that I've learned as I've gone to camera scanning from a dedicated film scanner, it's been really important to kind of build out a setup at the start that gives you like some convenience and something that's permanent and dialed in. So when you do go to scan your film, it's just much easier and much nicer to use and gives you the best results possible. So today, just like in that last video, we're gonna use a couple different options from Veloy, one lower priced and one a little bit more expensive. So the first and most affordable option is the starter kit from Veloy. This comes in at £64, and this has the Cinestill CS Lite and a 35mm film holder from Veloy. So this is a very simple kit, but it gives you these 2 elements, which allows you to get started right away. So the CS Lite, I've actually been using this one since I first started. It came with the first kit that I got. And it's higher CRI, I think it's like 95, and it comes with 3 different color temperatures you can choose from depending on the film that you're scanning. And then it comes with one holder, which uses this little adapter here and sits right on top of the light. So just with these 2 pieces, you could set this onto your copy stand and start scanning right away. If you wanted to get something a bit more solid and convenient that also gives you 120 capability, they have their Enthusiast kit coming in at £153, and this is the one that we'll use today. And this does expand on that starter kit a little bit, so you get the same light and you get the same 35mm holder, but you also get a 120 holder to use. and then you get Veloy's light adapter. So it's this really solid steel base, has leveling feet on it, and it allows you to just sit the mask right on top. So a little bit more of like a solid foundation to scan from. And then the nice thing is with all of these pieces is that you can kind of build to them as you want. So this light adapter also takes their advancer, which you can mount on top, and you can also add all sorts of different pieces as you go. And the last part of the kit today is the copy stand. And once again, I went for the CS500, which came in at 50 pounds. And this is the exact one that I've used a few times here on the channel. When it comes to cheap copy stands, honestly, they are non-existent. And that's why I keep going for this one. And this isn't perfect by any means, but for 50 pounds, it's the best that I've found. The only downside is this head up here is made out of plastic. And when you have your hands on the camera and you're trying to do like a fine focus, you get these pretty bad micro vibrations. When your hands are off the camera and you're shooting, it's completely fine, but it is a little bit of a pain when you're focusing. But honestly, like I said, I found no other options anywhere near this price range. So for an affordable kit, this is the go-to. Okay, so totaling everything up using the starter kit, our setup comes in at just under 214 pounds, and with the enthusiast kit, just under 303 pounds. So actually a decent amount shaved off the price from the setup in the last video, and honestly not that bad in my opinion, especially with the starter kit, considering it gives you everything you need to get going. Okay, we'll jump on the computer in just a second and I'll show you the results. I just want to walk you through the process here very, very quickly. I'm not going to go too in depth because I've done this a lot in my other videos, but just want to talk about the G1 specifically. So have everything set up here. You obviously want to level out your film and your lens so they're both parallel. You do this by just putting a mirror on and centering your lens in the reflection. There's some instructions on Veloy's website how to do this. Super straightforward. From there though, I have my camera set up in RAW mode, shooting at 5600 Kelvin. I have 2/3 of a stop of exposure compensation. And then it's just as simple as focusing and shooting. And to do this, I'm gonna punch in to 100%. And the one downside on this camera is that it doesn't have any focus peaking. So all of the other cameras I've used have focus peaking. And what I do is just zoom into 100% and just focus until that peaking is strongest. So with this, it's lacking that, and you combine that with these kind of micro jitters you get from this copy stand, and it makes it a little bit finicky. It's just not as enjoyable as a more solid stand and a camera that has peaking. But yeah, it's gotta be some compromises when you're trying to spend as little money as possible. So that looks pretty good to me. Aperture is set, I think, just over 5.6 on this lens. And then I have a self timer, and it's a matter of just going ahead and I would shoot this frame. So obviously I've scanned all this film already. So we'll jump on the computer now. We'll take a look at some of these. Okay, so jumping into things, we have the G1 here, and this is 645 film to start. And you'll see 12 megapixels is giving us a 3850 on the long edge. And this is actually not that bad. With 645 film, the nice thing with the Micro Four Thirds sensor is you're not cropping at all. So this isn't bad when it comes to resolution. In comparison, this is the same frame scanned at a lab on a Frontier. This would be like a standard lab scan, pretty common size. You could expect around 3000 pixels. So even with like a lower resolution sensor, if you're building a setup like this, it's still gonna give you a little bit more flexibility when it comes to image size. But overall look is really nice. You can see it did a great job. And this is one of the things that I realized very quickly with this G1 is even with this older sensor tech, it behaved very similar to any other camera that I've used doing this. And you'll see I did this same frame here on the S5 IIX I'm filming with right now in a Sigma macro art lens. And if we go to a comparison mode, so we have S5 IIX on the left here, G1 on the right, obviously a jump in resolution at 24 megapixels, but when it comes to the look of both of these are straight conversions from Negative Lab Pro, and they look so incredibly similar. You could tweak either one if you wanted. But if we go in to 200% here, so this is S5 IIX on left, G1 on right, and you'll see, again, higher resolution here, but from a detail and sharpness standpoint, like this actually did a very good job. It impressed me right away. Not as nice, you can see up here on the S5 IIX with that nice Sigma macro lens, a little bit better like fine detail in the hat here. It's kind of missing with this setup. But when you consider, you know, this is like a 2,000 pound setup, this is 100 pounds. Yes, this is better, but this was very surprising how good of a job this older Vivitar lens did and this older sensor. So cool to see. We have another 645 here. This is the G1. This is the S5 2X. Go into comparison mode. S5 here, G1 here. Again, the look of both of these is so similar. Maybe a little bit more saturated on this one, but nothing that you couldn't tweak afterwards, which you're always doing anyways when you're digitizing your film. You know, highlights are very similar in both, shadows are. And if we go in again to 200%, same thing. This does look better. Yes, a little bit kind of finer detail in the headlights here, but you know, this one was impressive. And this is cool to see, you know, these older macro lenses, if you find a good copy, they hold up surprisingly well, especially, you know, paying 45 pounds for this copy. You know, it's pretty good value for your money. So this is the theme that I've started to notice after doing all, you know, a bunch of these tests over the years, from everything from like a GFX 100S now down to this camera, is yes, more expensive, better equipment is going to give you better results, but the differences are never as drastic as the price difference. And I think this is a really clear example of this. And then I just have some other 645 frames that I scanned quickly here, just as I was kind of getting a feel for how this performed. And like I said, you know, these all kind of converted and behaved exactly like any other camera I've used for this. So it's neat to see, you know, even with much older tech, it's still going to be completely capable of digitizing film and converting just like any other camera would. So this is 35mm now. We're obviously losing a little bit off the top because it's a 3.2 frame. Still looks good, still 3800 on the long edge, but as a comparison, this is the same frame done with a GFX 50R. This was from a couple of years back. Obviously much bigger sensor, much higher resolution. And if we go into comparison mode, so 50R on left, G1 on right, again, from a look standpoint, these actually stack up, you know, and compare pretty well to one another. The sky here in the GFX 50R one, this is obviously a very dense area of the negative. It's done a better job when it comes to like subtle tone changes. You can see it's not as nice here, especially with color as well. But when you take into account the price difference, the tech difference, sensor size, this holds up pretty well. And if we go into 200% again and we look at the detail, like I said, this did surprise me. This Vivitar lens did such a good job. You know, they both look really good. And then one more 35mm example here. So G1 again, and just for fun, this was the same frame done with the XA3 from the last budget video. If we go to compare the two, XA3 on the left, G1 on the right. Again, bump in resolution, 24 megapixels. But other than that, the look of these is very similar. And if we zoom into 200%, the sharpness and detail is very similar. At their kind of respective resolutions. And then the last one is just 6:7. And obviously we're cropping in now, so we're losing a little bit of resolution, 3,500 pixels, still a decent size file. And these ones gave me more of the same. You know, they look great. They converted really, really well. So this was cool to see, and this is one of the things that I was most curious about going into this. Like I said, I've used expensive cameras, I've used, you know, quite affordable cameras, but I was curious, like, is there a breaking point? You know, do you get to a point when you go way back, smaller sensor, older tech, really cheap, where it just isn't good, where it doesn't work anymore? And what this has showed me, honestly, from these results, is that if you're getting into scanning at home and you want to build one of these setups, you can honestly go out and buy any digital mirrorless camera that you can afford. And even something that's at the very kind of low end of the spectrum when it comes to resolution and price is still going to give you flexible and capable files. So really cool to see these results and impressed by what this could do considering what it is. But I did want to say, you know, there obviously are a lot of ways you can go about digitizing or scanning your film. You know, camera scanning is a method that I've come to really like and what I've changed over to, but especially if you're doing things on a budget. If you're just shooting 35mm, you could go and look for something like a used Plestech. I did a Plestech video a few years ago, and I was actually really impressed with the scans from it. Very detailed and very sharp, and would be higher resolution than what we got out of this. The only downside, you know, beyond not being multi-format capable, is just the speed. And that's been the biggest thing for me with camera scanning, is just how much quicker it is. Obviously, it's all gonna come down to personal preference and what you need and what you want. Lots of other options out there, but like I said, this method has been one that's won me over. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this one. Like I said, leave a comment below if you want to be entered in the giveaway. A week from now, I'll announce the winners. And other than that, just want to say thank you for watching. I'll talk to you soon.